everyone, and welcome back to Phantom Sports Industries. My name's Joe Soisson. I'm a contributor for Phantom's hockey content. Today, the NHL regular season is wrapping up, which means it's time for the playoffs, and it's time for one last power ranking video. But I thought I'd do something a little different this time around. I'm still going to do the top 10 teams in the league, but I thought it'd be nice if the top 8 teams I selected were actually the final 8 teams remaining in the postseason. So, in order for a team to break into my top 8, they have to be a team that I think can win a playoff series as well. I took that into account with all of the other stats you know I love to cover, and this is the list of teams I came up with. These are my top 10 teams in the NHL by the end of the regular season. We start things off at number 10, where I picked the Florida Panthers. So here's the crazy part about Florida. On one hand, I could see this team competing in the Stanley Cup Finals, and on the other hand, I think they could lose the opening round of the playoffs. They could be one of the most potent offenses in the Atlantic once Tkachuk comes back from IR, because Brad Marchand is already clicking in his first few games back from his injury. But they are not last year's team. They're 7th in goals against average. They were first last year in that category. They're 4th least in total shots against. Last year they were 3rd. And they are still one of the most penalized teams in the league. And even Seth Jones, who fills a gap on this roster, is a double-edged sword. He provides some offense with 9 goals so far this season, but he hasn't finished the season with a positive plus-minus since 2020. And even on this roster, he's not on pace to do so. We'll see how the regular season ends, but right now, my confidence is shaken when it comes to the defending champs. At number 9, the Dallas Stars. Again, another team that I could see in the Stanley Cup Finals. They've got so much going for them. Top 4 in goals per game and goals against average. 2nd in penalty kill percentage. And I loved their trades. They added a top-tier goal scorer in Mikko Rantanen and one of the highest goal scorers from the Four Nations tournament in Mikael Granlund. They've got defensive scoring from Thomas Harley, and Ottinger is 9th in both goals against average and save percentage. But I've got them at number 9 because they'll likely play Colorado in the first round, and that is a brutal opening round draw. 1-1-1 against them this year, but lost the last 2, and both came after Colorado signed Mackenzie Blackwood. Even if they survive the first round, they've struggled against Winnipeg and Minnesota, who they could potentially see in round 2. And Dallas allows a few more scoring chances than I'd like. They're 12th in total shots against this year. So despite high expectations, I wouldn't be surprised to see this team, who is so consistent in the postseason, fall early this year. Next up at number 8, the Ottawa Senators. This could be the upset team of the postseason. Their power play is dangerous. Ottawa is top 5 in power play goals this year. Only Winnipeg right now would enter the playoffs with more power play goals than them. They're also 16th in the league in power play percentage, which to me signals that they draw a lot of penalties. And under the radar, I thought their moves at the trade deadline were great. They got Dylan Cousins and Fabian Zetterlund, giving them true scoring depth at forward. The Senators now have 10 forwards with more than 10 goals this year. And they've also got some really likable defensemen. Jake Sanderson is 10th among the position in points, and Shabbat and Jensen have the best plus-minuses on the team right now. And if the playoffs started today, Ottawa would play the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round, who they are 3-0 against this year. They win that playoff series, and all of a sudden, they're one of the top 8 teams left by the end of the year. And number 7, I've got the Edmonton Oilers. They're almost the antithesis of the Los Angeles Kings, who they might end up playing in the first round. Listen to these offensive numbers. Edmonton's got the 10th best goals per game average, 8th best power play percentage, and the most shots in the league. Leon Draisaitl has the most goals and the 3rd most points in the league, and McDavid's not far behind him at 5th in total points. And there's some real scoring depth here as well. 9 forwards with at least 10 goals so far. Defensively, they're not as stout as some other playoff teams, but they picked up Jake Wallman from San Jose. He's a starting defenseman. Evan Bouchard has the 4th most points among defenders. Ekholm and Nurse also still have positive plus minuses. But I've got 3 concerns for this team. First, Edmonton's team save percentage will be the worst of anyone on my top 10, just below 90%. Second, they would have the least amount of home wins of anyone in my top 10. And lastly, I still feel like there's a lot of pressure on this top line. Some of these depth players who've stepped up recently have negative plus minuses still. But it's not the end of the world when your starters look this good. My pick for number 6, the Carolina Hurricanes. They're consistently a top team in the Metro. 9th in goals per game average, 8th in goals against average. But their biggest strength is shot differential. They're 3rd in the league in shots for and last in the league in shots against. So they get pucks to the net and don't allow pucks on their net. But the build of this roster is fascinating. With guys like Logan Stankoven and Jackson Blake in the lineup, their forwards are generally pretty young. Hall, Martinook, and Stahl are all over 30, but those are some talented veterans sprinkled throughout this lineup. But their defense is getting old. 5 of their top 6 defensemen are age 30 or older. So I'm interested to see this group in the postseason because it's young forward legs mixed with great defensive minds on one of the best home ice teams in the league. In fact, they are the best home ice team in the East. No one has more wins at home in the Eastern Conference than the Carolina Hurricanes, which makes them a danger in the playoffs, especially in the opening round. Making the turn at number 5, I've got the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, why not pick the Jets for the Stanley Cup this year? They're 4th in goals per game average, 1st in goals against average, they've got the best goal differential in the league, and they're on track to win the President's Trophy this year. They've got some of the best players in the league. Connor Hellebuck leads the league in goals against average and save percentage, and Kyle Connor is 7th in the league in total points. There's also a bit of extra motivation for this group. Winnipeg has lost the first round of the playoffs in 5 of their last 6 seasons. With this much talent, they are eager to break that streak. I worry a little bit when Morrissey and Pionk are off the ice, and their penalty kill is 14th in the league, so it's closer to middle of the pack. But generally, the defensemen have played well. Line 2 of Sandberg and DeMello have the best plus minuses on the team. And I liked the move for Brandon Tanev. He doesn't get a ton of points, but Winnipeg already has scoring depth, and you could always use more fast and physical guys like Tanev in the postseason. I'd find it hard to believe they don't find at least one playoff series win this year. Now for the final 4, at number 4, I've got the Colorado Avalanche. This is one of the scariest teams in the league. They're 5th in goals per game average and 11th in goals against average. But they moved off a lot of players and continued to find ways to win. They traded Georgiev for Blackwood. That's been a success. They moved off Mikko Rantanen, who's 13th in the league in points right now. Doesn't matter. Natchez has 26 points in 27 games. They moved off Casey Middlestat, young, talented, 34 points this year. Well, the older veterans they've picked up have helped this team go 13-3-2 since March 1st. And remember what they did for the playoffs last year. Jonathan Drouin was injured for Game 1. They brought in Zach Parise instead of swinging someone else up to the top line. Colorado loves their veterans. It's about working smarter, not harder. That's why Brock Nelson and Charlie Coyle are going to work on this team. Plus, their record against the Central Division is good this year. They're 2-0 against Dallas since picking up Mackenzie Blackwood, and 1-1 against Winnipeg, outscoring them 7-6 in the regular season. They might be underdogs in terms of seeding, but that just makes them bracket busters. Pick against this team at your own peril. At number 3, I've got the Tampa Bay Lightning. Before the season started, Tampa Bay was one of my favorites to win the Stanley Cup this year. And they didn't look like it early on this season, but they're catching fire at the right time. 7-0-1 in February, 9-5-1 in March, and 14-6-3 since the Four Nations face-off. They're second in goals per game average and fourth in goals against average. They're top 8 in both power play and penalty kill percentages. And with the pickups at the trade deadline, this forward depth is nasty. Kucherov leads the league in points for the second year in a row. Point and Gensel are both top 10 goal scorers in the league this year. Then Hagel and Cirelli are having career highs in points this season. And the guys they traded for, in 17 games, Gord has 11 points, Bjorkstrand has 9. They also check the boxes for having a top-tier goalie and defenseman. Victor Hedman has the 6th most points among defensemen, and Vasilevsky is 3rd in goals against average and 2nd in save percentage. My only concern for them is that they've struggled against Florida and Toronto this year, but the games have been extremely close and you can't count out John Cooper's teams. But at number 2, I just find it so hard to pick against the Washington Capitals this year. They've got the best record in the East. They're 1st in goals per game average and 8th in goals against average. With Beauvillier in the lineup, they've got 11 skaters with double-digit goals this year. And with the emotional high of Ovechkin surpassing Gretzky's record, they honestly start to feel like a team of destiny. They've even found a scoring defenseman in Jacob Chychrun, who's tied for the 2nd most goals at the position. The only marks I have against them are that they are 9th in total penalty minutes, so they give up some power play chances, and for all that offensive prowess, they're 13th in power play percentage. So to have a chance against this team, you have to be incredibly disciplined and draw some penalties, because beating them 5-on-5 right now seems near impossible. But the team that I think could actually do it is my number 1 overall pick, the Las Vegas Golden Knights. They're 6th in goals per game average and 5th in goals against average. But the strength of this team is in their roster. Similar to Tampa Bay, you take into account these players that they acquired at the trade deadline, and they've got 12 forwards who have more than 10 goals this year. Eichel is the star of the show. He's tied with Connor McDavid for the 7th most points in the league. But then you have players like Mark Stone, Pavel Dorofeev, and Brett Howden, who are all hitting career highs in points this year. Barbashev improved from last year. He's got nearly 50 points. And had Hurdle not gotten hurt, he would have likely crossed the 60-point mark for the 3rd time in 4 years. Defensively, Shea Theodore is top 10 in points among defensemen this year, and Hanifin has more goals than Theodore this year. Add in Aiden Hill having a better year than when he won this team a Stanley Cup. He's 6th in goals against average and tied for 16th in save percentage with Bobrovsky, who won a cup last year. And despite players being in and out of this lineup due to injury, they're 15-5-3 since the Four Nations face-off tournament. I like their path to a Stanley Cup Finals too. They're 5-0-1 against both wildcard teams, 2-2 against Edmonton, and 4-2-3 against the top 3 teams in the Central. And as you know, regular season overtime and shootout are not the same in the playoffs. So that's why I like the Las Vegas Golden Knights to win the Stanley Cup this year. So there you have it. Those are my top 10 teams in the NHL. Also wanted to shout out some dark horses. The Toronto Maple Leafs and Los Angeles Kings, if they get good opening round matchups or conquer their bracket demons, they could make some deep playoff runs. But this is the top 10 that I settled on, and my Stanley Cup Finals, right now, I think the Las Vegas Golden Knights would beat the Washington Capitals in the championship round. But that's going to be it for me today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like our content, be sure to scroll down below and click the like button on this video. While you're down there, be sure to click that subscribe button to get notified of future uploads to this very channel. Also, be sure to check out our official website. That's phantomsportsindustries.com. Once again, my name has been Joe Soisson, and from the rest of Phantom Sports Industries, we hope to see more of you next time.